welcome to the Stronger After Stroke podcast. I'm your host, Rosa Hart, the stroke nurse navigator here at Norton Healthcare. And today joining me is a stroke survivor, Mark Green. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for him to get to share his story with you because recovering from a stroke looks different for every person, but I think you may find a lot is relatable in his story. So, Mark, would you tell us about what was your life like before the stroke first?
Yeah, it was a busy life, healthy in terms of thinking nothing was wrong. But the underlying piece that I'm sure we'll uncover here, I was actually living a pretty unhealthy life. And that led to my stroke, things like blood pressure, and all those factors you don't think are harming you at the time, definitely led up to the stroke. But working a healthy job, businesses, family was doing great, still great relationships with families, stuff that helps you through once you've had the stroke. Um, so I would, if you'd have met me on the street or we were getting to know each other, then I would have said, "Hey, life's great."
Yeah. And were you exercising? You said you were living a healthy lifestyle.
Yes, I had started around 2018, 2019, running. Did the usual high school stuff, and afterwards played a lot of basketball, baseball, softball, things like that. Fairly active and despised running.
Oh, yeah.
And my wife signed up for a half marathon, and I agreed to walk with her. And I got bored with walking and training, and decided I'll just try running, and fell in love with running. So I went from hatred and ran the morning of the stroke. And we talked a little
Oh,
about
my
that beforehand.
goodness. So tell us about the day of your stroke. You did the half marathon the day of your
No, I
stroke?
was training for the next one. It
Okay.
was towards the end of April. It was the one for Round Derby, and that's the first one I had run. Would have been 5 years before the day of the stroke, and so I was beginning to train for that. It was I was training for that. It was a few weeks before.
Wow.
So that morning I had a training.
And then I think you said you're coming up on the anniversary of your stroke, right?
I had so the 20-month anniversary. I had my stroke on April 9th of 2024. And so, I never was a big 1 month anniversary guy, but when you have your stroke anniversary, you're appreciative of every night that comes and goes
Yeah,
afterwards.
definitely.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to keep your gratitude journal organized by month, right?
Yes.
And were you running and then started having stroke symptoms, or what symptoms started happening?
Yeah. So kind of interesting. I ran in the morning. It wasn't planned. I was packing up to go to work. Took a quick look at the weather and saw it was going to be raining that afternoon. I thought, well, okay, I'll just switch up and run before work. So I ran, no symptoms or anything like that. Felt great. Was even thinking to myself afterwards, like, this is coming along. My time's improving. I'm on track for the half marathon, and got ready for work, and felt a little lightheaded, a little tingly, which I didn't think was unusual. I hadn't eaten. I was drinking coffee, the whole thing, and as I was driving to work, I felt more lightheaded, but still wasn't thinking anything until I looked down and I was doing about 40 miles an hour. And I looked quick in the rear view and saw this line of traffic behind me. I had no idea how long I'd been doing that. So I tried to speed back up to speed, and I looked down again and I was going 40, and I'm telling my brain to do the speed limit. And it's just a short space of time. I'm like, okay, this is trouble. And I was on 2-lane highway, and I got to a pullover and pulled over. And, still, I didn't understand what was happening, but something was going on. So I tried to call my wife. And as it was ringing, I'm like, this feels serious. I still, no comprehension what was really happening. And I hung up on that call after like 2 rings, and I just dialed 911. And
Wow.
lady stayed on there with me until the ambulance got there, and the EMT was awesome. He came and visited me afterwards and stuff. Yeah, it was cool. It's just the blessings of people that the Lord brought into my life, even down to the EMT, the lady who answered the call. I look back and it was, it's a difficult journey, but just being anointed with things like that. The lady that was willing to stay on the line for, like, she told me the progress of the ambulance, and she just talked through, and she agreed at some point I realized, hey, is this like a stroke? And she said, yeah, I'm not an EMT, but it sounds like one. And then he got there and confirmed it immediately,
Wow.
basically. And so he was part of the blessing in terms that he got whatever the preliminary drugs that they want to get into you to treat the ongoing symptoms of a stroke. He got them in me before I ever came out of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So
Probably something for blood pressure. Was your blood pressure really
yeah,
high?
yeah. I still meet my neurologist, and she has, I mean, she's confirmed, and so did the doctors there in the emergency room. It was blood pressure caused. And that's part of my unhealthy lifestyle. I was, even with the running and things I was doing,
Yeah.
the underlying part is just I wasn't, I was severely overweight still. Part of the reason I was running. Um, my relationship with alcohol wasn't good, and so those two things were kind of the driving force. So the blood pressure was definitely what caused. I had the hemorrhagic, I think it's called, where it was a brain bleed instead of the typical blood clot thing. And so when you have that, it was absolutely, and the spot it occurred is in the center of where blood pressure strokes happen. So
Wow.
my neurologist said, yeah, it was blood pressure.
And
And
did you know you had high blood pressure, you said,
yeah.
because you were trying to lose weight by running
Yeah,
already?
yeah, and so with that, it's kind of a toxic brew because you're doing things that aren't good for your body while trying to do things that are good for your body, and so you get a little overconfident. I hadn't addressed my blood pressure the way that I needed to take it to the next level with my medicine and be more disciplined in that, and in treating my body better with my relationship with food and alcohol, and those two things, uh, you know, they're working opposite completely against what you need to be doing when you know. So yes, I was aware of my blood pressure, but not taking care of it the way I should have. I never once did I think I was to a point where we joke about stroking out and stuff, but
Right.
I literally stroked out over all that. Yeah.
And it's a joke until it's not, right?
No, until it's real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, I mean, I'm so thankful that you survived and you're doing better.
Mhm.
Did you end up going to any like acute rehab facilities, or were you discharged directly to home after the hospital?
No, I was hospitalized in the emergency care a little longer than normal, because they could not get my blood pressure under control, and, it was kinda mystifi that part was a little unnerving because, you have the professionals, and they could not get the blood pressure anywhere near normal. Even afterwards, I'm in a stable environment. My stroke has been, all I've had tests run over and over. So, the brain bleed has stopped. I'm completely lost the right side. I'm sure we'll get into that. I mean, it was a pretty bad stroke. And they couldn't, so that part was like 5, 6 days, which is
Wow.
really unusual, and then I went into acute rehab because, I'm right-handed, everything of my life had just changed, and I couldn't physically move anything. Yeah, I mean, and so part of my therapy, I learned that we not to use the word paralyzed because I'm technically not paralyzed. My brain just can't tell my right side what to do. I mean, it's working physically fine, but neurologically it wasn't. So it was one of my first lessons.
Yeah, and how did they explain to you the difference between being paralyzed and you're neurologically not able to communicate with your arm and leg?
Yeah, so, and also my daughter found a book called, ironically, Stronger After Stroke is the
Yes.
name of the book. I don't know if you're
Yes.
familiar
Yeah.
with that. So I was reading that book well before I started talking to you.
Oh, yes.
And that book echoed what they were telling me that, uh, the neuro pathway. So what had happened in the brain damage. And my mom had an aneurysm break. So
Really?
I was familiar with a brain injury.
Wow.
She had a stroke and a follow-up procedure as well, pretty severe. So you learn a lot about the brain, but it's completely different when it's your brain and
Yeah.
it's not firing right.
And did that happen to her around the same age yours
It
happened?
happened, no, it happened in January of 22.
Oh, so like 2 years before
Yeah,
yours.
exactly.
Wow.
So when I finally was able to travel, which I think was the end of that summer, it was somewhere in the 4 to 6 month range before I was even able to travel 2 hours. Um, I had not thought through the visual of I was still in a wheelchair at that point, and sitting in a wheelchair next to her, and she's not really able to communicate. She's not respond. But what I learned in that was that what had happened in my stroke is that the bleed had damaged my ability to communicate.
Yeah.
So neural pathways, if you've heard that term, and the healing process, what happens when I was working. So did a great job in rehab explaining some of that in the beginnings. It was like, you have to get moving. So they're trying to get me to move and I can't move. So my wife has a video of the first time they got me up there still in the emergency, and ironically, the therapist, the physical therapist lady that I had until I moved closer to home in Taylorsville about 3 months ago,
Mhm.
she worked on Fridays, and this is part of the Lord anointing, just showing me some grace during all this. She worked every Friday just because she wanted to stay in touch with as people came in. It was good for her to see what she was getting in as regular therapy in the Norton, off Westport Road, there, neurological rehab there.
Yeah.
And she's the first one that got me up. And then when I went in and started therapy, I got her. Just totally random, and it's like I should have bought a lottery ticket that day and she was with me the
That's
whole
lucky.
time. So right away, she knew enough to be telling me, "Look, what we're doing is we're moving stuff. You've got to move because every little thing, every little movement. Like I couldn't move my hand, I couldn't talk. I like to use my hands. So
Wow.
I'm holding on to them today for you, um, and that all of that is beginning to build the new neural pathways
Yeah.
and so that's what you got to fix is the brain being able to tell the body what to do. So you're not technically paralyzed.
Yeah.
You're just got to figure out a new way to have your brain say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I still struggle with that to this day. My brain's thinking, walk right. And there are times where my foot will, one of the big things I deal with is when I take a step forward, my whole body's lurching, but my foot doesn't follow that
Mm.
command and it sticks to the floor a little bit, especially when I'm tired.
Yes.
I just dodged the bullet barely on speech. I had a lot of speech therapy. Um, so even today, when I get a little excited about talking and when I get really tired, um, my voice is heavy, slurred. It's kind of bad. It sounds like my drunk voice,
Oh,
and
no.
that's what I hear in my head, and it starts to come through. And I'm reading another book. It's called Identity Crisis, and it's written by someone who had the exact same stroke. She's
Yeah.
taught the doctorate program at Stanford, brilliant lady, and identical blood pressure, same spot in the brain. Everything's the same except it's right there next to your speech,
Yeah.
your ability to talk. She lost her ability to talk, and a lot of that. But she talks about the identity crisis you go through, which is another whole
Especially
topic.
when your life was based around something, right? Maybe if you're a musician and you're playing your instrument and that's who you identify as, and if the stroke impacts that, then you're like, who even am I if I can't play my music, right? Whereas for like you and for her, a lot of your identity was around communication, right? Didn't you say you worked in an area where you were doing a lot of
Um,
communication?
yeah, so the last several years before the stroke, we had a handful of family businesses. But before that, my career included time in marketing
Yeah.
and doing things, telling about our company, making videos like this, and So yes, there was a lot of the ability to communicate and do things. I have to, even in talking to you right now in real time,
Yeah.
my brain is, I'm trying to remind my brain to speak clearly and
Oh, wow.
enunciate right
Well,
because
good job because it's working.
yeah, thank you. Uh, and a lot of, and my family and my friends, most of the people in my life are telling me, yeah, hey, you sound fine. And what I'm hearing in my head, because everything split straight down the middle, I still can't feel it even
Really?
today.
Even though
Stop.
I've seen you move your
Yeah,
arm
I
and your
can't
leg.
feel my hands. I can't. So that's a part that I wish I get that back because it would help recovery. I can't feel my way through
Mhm.
anything I'm holding. I'll drop things when I'm trying to carry and be intentional about getting this hand going. If I look away or get distracted for a second about a step or something, it'll slip right on my hand because I don't even know I'm losing the
Yeah.
grip I have.
So apart from the sensation, do you know, did you experience any neglect on that side of your body at all?
What do you mean by that?
Just like forgetting that that side of your body is
Oh
there.
yeah, like even sitting like, well, my wife and I will watch a show, and my hand will be down here, twisted up in a terrible position. I look down, and I go, that's not right. I got to have it up here. I just yes. So if that's what you mean, yes, I deal with that a lot. My foot was weak in the walking process. My ankle would roll a lot and I wouldn't even know it's really
Right.
happening. So I had to break after a few months and getting stronger and walking. You have to break this terrible habit of just I'm just staring down on every step to make sure I'm landing my foot right.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was going on. It still goes on some today.
And it sounds like a lot of work and really exhausting work, even though it sounds so simple. And I think you and I have talked a lot about the fatigue that comes after a stroke. Can you describe that and how the fatigue after stroke is different from being tired in the way it was before?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you and I tried to get together beforehand
Hmm.
in we call it so the terminology that I've learned in my rehab is neuro fatigue. The slang for that is brain fog. And even with being around my mom, and when you're around like someone like my mom who's been through something like that, you meet others who are going through it and you hear it and you just don't really respect what it is until you're dealing with it. And we talked a little bit about 6 month increments. And so 6 months out from my stroke, I'm out of the wheelchair and walking a little bit, and I'm telling you, wow, compared to 6 months ago, I'm so clear headed now. I'm tired, and I'm still not really understanding neuro fatigue yet. I kind of know there's something going on. It's better, it's bigger than just being tired. And then 6 months more, you realize, gosh, I was still in a terrible fog even then. And so discovering the neuro fatigue, it is a form of being tired, but it's intense. Your head's spinning a little bit. If you read deeper, a lot of people who have never had vertigo issues will be dealing with vertigo
Oh, wow.
afterwards. And so I liken what I personally experienced was very much like that: head spinning, the room spinning, nauseous,
Hmm.
all those things. And when you lay that over top of all of your physical challenges, man, it's like you've got to, if it wasn't for my faith and my walk and my belief in Jesus Christ, that um, if I didn't have that kind of faith and hope going through that, the mental game of this is like it's crazy what you're dealing with. And and talking about identity and
Yeah.
not it probably took me a good full year to truly grasp that it's not just some of your identity. Everything you have known or thought about yourself it's not the same.
Mm.
And so to really basically turn your identity upside down to everything from being a husband, a dad, a friend, all the things you want to be to people, that's all gone, and you're rebuilding that and reforming that. And I and recovery groups and things like that were huge. And I hope we can talk. I mean, this is out of recovery, is why I'm here. So it's the name and everything. I found you through recovery. Um, but then you lay your question of the fatigue, and you feel it coming on, but you don't get much warning. And when it hits, it's crippling. I don't know if that's a good choice of words, but you're already a little bit
Well,
fat if you're
and you
true.
alluded to that too, in that if the fatigue is coming on, even though I'm seeing you use your right arm and your right leg, you walked in here and everything, but they stop working as well when it
Oh
hits,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and rehab and things that you've got to rehab every day. So every single day, I've got to try to. And when that hits, you don't know how long it's going to last, and you certainly can't address that stuff. It's all I can do to keep my head up. Now I say that at present tense, I rarely deal with that anymore. So that's a blessing.
Mm,
And so back to the recovery groups, what triggered me to say that is that, I encounter people who are still dealing with that,
yeah.
4, 5, 6 years later. And one of the hazards of recovery group, you start thinking, oh, you get fear in you because you're thinking, I could be like that. And I have been fortunate enough. I think a lot of it does have to do with staying active. And
Hmm.
as soon as you're not down for the count, because I'm telling you, the neuro part of it, the brain fog part of it, and when you're tingling and spinning, and I can tell you, in those times, virtually maybe 60, 70% of the time, you find yourself wondering if you're having another stroke, and that's not a good place to be. I mean,
Right.
because I tell you, if I have a fear, and I really don't, whatever happens, you know, I have faith in the Lord, and He's gonna get me through. I have that relationship, and but the fear that kind of can creep in there is the fear of another stroke. To
Yeah.
to go back to where I was when I comprehended what I really was up against, and I couldn't move my right side,
Yeah.
and I couldn't go to the restroom alone. All the things that people don't really think about. I had to have my wife handy and ready just to do a simple restroom function, and to be back there again is a pretty scary thought.
Hmm.
But then again, it's like, okay, if I find myself there, let's get started. Let's go. We gotta do it again. I would prefer to go back to your question. I prefer not to have as much neuro fatigue and
Right.
tingly things I hadn't experienced with the room spinning and feeling nauseous. And if I move a little, it kicks it up more. So I just gotta sit very still. And so back, one of the things we alluded to was me getting with you. Like one day I was supposed to be here with you, and I was woke up with it, and I couldn't move. And when you're like with you, anything in life, anybody in life that you've got an engagement, you've got an appointment, or you just can't engage with because of that, I don't know what the word is. You just don't. It affects your core confidence. You know what
Mm,
I'm saying? And you can't. Like I'm supposed to be with so and so at lunch, and there's a couple times I was like, I can't speak to anyone, honey. Will you just please let them know I can't make it today?
yeah.
And coming out of the real world, and you're dealing with that, and people do that to you. I'm probably wasn't as compassionate with those people that were saying, Hey, I got this going on. I can't be there today." And so the life lessons and all this are a constant.
Yeah. To be understanding that sometimes people just have things and they just can't make it to their plans. And, life happens, but I think it happens, I like to think it happens for a reason and in its own
Mm,
timing.
yeah.
And so I think this is going to be a good opportunity to start the new year of 2026 talking about your experience and the fatigue symptom, even for people who have a TIA and don't have symptoms to deal with where they're having to go to rehab and therapy, they may still get really fatigued.
Hmm.
Like they'll overdo it one day and then the next day like be wiped out and not able to do anything. So I think giving voice to that, like you said in the beginning, you were not able to communicate, and then your mom still was not able to
Yeah.
communicate.
Still can't.
And so for you to put that into words and be able to explain the difference before and after to like normalize the experience and help people feel understood and that they're not alone in that experience, and maybe even share it with family members or friends who don't understand.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that that can be helpful because you said you've listened to a lot of other stroke survivor stories,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, your podcast is one, it's like when I walked in and we hadn't actually physically like, I know you, because 'cause I've been watching you
Yeah.
all the time on these, and, so, yeah, I'm sorry, remind me of this. So one of the things with stroke
Mhm.
is, like, I've never dealt with this in my life, but I completely blank out on what I was supposed to be answering occasionally, and I hoped it wouldn't happen today, but
No,
it did.
it's totally fine. So you said you had listened to other stroke survivor
Oh,
stories
yeah.
in addition to reading the books. And then
Yeah.
did you go to support groups as well?
Yes. So I went to the Norton at the Neurological Center. They have a
At
monthly support
Crestman?
group. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cressman. And that's been very, very good. And the books that I mentioned,
Yeah.
the Stronger After Stroke, and that lady's story
In
is
identity theft?
powerful. Identity theft.
Yeah.
Yes. That story is so powerful. It resonated with me because, like her, my ability to work, my ability to provide, and so you realize early on, like, hey, I'm probably not going to be going back to work anytime soon, if at all. You realize those things inherently, but you're not thinking about that as identity. Like,
Yeah.
I'm no longer providing for my wife anymore. Things like that, and that's some heavy stuff, but her story in particular just resonated that she woke up with the same thing, and, she thought she'd be back, and she realized somewhere in the process she probably wasn't going to be teaching doctorate people in Stanford any longer, and that resonated with me, and so the book, recovery group, hearing other people's stories. So that's my hope today, is that my story, if there's one person that gains one tiny nugget out of anything I say, then it's a success for me.
Yeah.
That's my desire, is telling my story, stressing recovery,
Mm-hmm.
because back to the neuro fatigue and things. When you're coming out of that, it's like you don't feel like doing anything. When the spinning stops, now you're just good old fashioned exhausted, and you don't feel like getting up and just walking, because that's part of your therapy. You got to try to walk through the house with a
Yep.
cane and not fall again. A lot of falls and stuff like that. You hit the floor, you learn to hit the floor, right?
Without hitting your head?
Without hitting your head. Sometimes you hit your head. You got to get over that too. um, and if I stress enough to challenge yourself, encourage yourself just to do a little bit, get going again, because that's where the healing really takes place. And being around people who are telling their story. I mean, I'm a big story guy anyway.
Yeah.
I've been pretty vocal in this about my faith, and so that's what Jesus did. I mean, he taught through stories,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and he taught through, and so I want to be like that. And so if my story encourages anyone, and maybe gets them to ask a question to me, I want to be able to answer that question. And that's support and in a recovery, and that's meant a lot to me,
For
a
sure.
whole lot to me.
Well,
So
let me ask you a bit more about attending the support groups because when I invite
yeah,
people that I'm calling for follow up on the phone to attend a support group, a lot of the times they'll say, well, I don't have anything wrong with me that anybody can see, so I'm afraid I'll show up. And people will be like, why are you even here? There's nothing wrong with you that we can see, right? Do you
that's
feel
why you
like,
go.
yeah, do you feel like that is, you have anything you'd want to say to that person?
Yeah. Well, I would say to that person, my story
Hmm.
is the first time I walked into the support group at Cressman, is that, I had questions. Am I doing the right thing? Do I really need this? And then the first two or three people, as fate would have it, walked in, they looked normal to me and sat down. I'm like, what am I going to get from two people who just trotted in looking all happy? And then a few others came in. One person came in a wheelchair, and then I was like, okay, yeah, because I'm still in a wheelchair some at this
Hmm.
point, the first time I've attended. And I'm like, okay, I got some people here. But it was a story of the two people who bounced in there walking that got me going because they were 3 years out from the stroke. They were 4 years out from the stroke. So they were further out, didn't realize that, we're humans, so we judge, a little bit. So I'm getting judgy when they're skipping in, and the work those two people had done to be able to come in the room the way they did. I couldn't still probably, even though I was doing the work at that moment, just to be able to walk what little I could walk at that time, they had put in 20 times.
Yeah.
And it's just sweating and the pain. I mean, we haven't talked much about the pain you deal with.
Please.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. And a lot of it's like, I never understood ever. People would talk about your brain can feel pain even though you're really, there's may
Like
not.
phantom pain.
Yeah, and I'm like, I would dismiss that. Like, that's crazy talk. And suddenly I didn't have the use of my right side. I couldn't feel, I still can't feel anything, but yet it all hurt.
You're
How is
right.
that?
You're right. You're talking about like how your body physiologically responds to pain. Like if you experience pain in your arm that your brain doesn't interpret as, ouch, I'm feeling pain, your body may still have a rise in blood pressure, for
Oh yeah.
example.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't feel you touch me, but it all hurts. And so,
Does it kind of just feel like your brain is aching? What's that like?
yeah, well, like my arm is aching, like I've hurt
Okay.
my arm, I've
You do
hurt my
feel like
leg,
there
but,
is a location of pain in that
oh
general
yeah,
area?
yeah, I can't feel anything. That was really right after the stroke I'm talking
Okay.
about. So
Okay.
that's important in recovery, and that's an important part about therapy because you're tempted to sit in that chair, man. I'm telling you. And so the other book we mentioned, Stronger After Stroke, it breaks it down a couple different because it's encouraging you to just get engaged, and
Yeah.
then you'll want to do the work because if you don't do the work. So when I started up getting more engaged in therapy, the pain that what was experiencing and telling you, which was intense and I couldn't understand it, like everything on my right side hurt, like I had been hit by a Mack truck. Really, that's what it felt like back to what you're explaining. You think I've fallen off a cliff or something here. I didn't. I was driving normal and I woke up. I had a stroke, couldn't move my right side, and it all hurt like
Wow.
intensely. And just starting to move it and acting and hearing people in recovery, kind of back to your point, is like out of recovery and the people who came in there and skipped in the room that day, back to the original point.
Were they really skipping though? Because
No,
now
in my mind,
my mental
they
image
were
is now.
limping and
Oh,
yeah, good question. No, but that's the point. That's how we were thinking. I'm like, oh, they skipped in like they came in through the flowers saying, oh, life's so good. But they were walking with a limp, but they
oh.
had done the work and been through those things and encouraged me. And
And to you at that point, even walking with a limp looked like
oh
skipping
yeah,
because it was
that's a
so
great
much
point. I'm so glad
smoother.
you highlighted that. Yes, absolutely.
Well, and I think, especially for people who don't have visible stroke symptoms, to think, whether or not they would be welcome to participate in things like that if people are going to be like, what do you have to be supported about? Right.
Right. Well, and one lady of those two people, the one lady in particular, I remember it so well. The reason I'm saying it is because of the lesson from her. We went around the room, everybody's telling her story. She goes quick, and her stroke was a little different place, but it affected her right side. She's right-handed, and she couldn't move any of it, just like me. And there she sat, there she walked, and there she skipped in tossing daisies, in my mind. And I'm sitting there going, wow. And she was almost 4 years out from a stroke. And
Yeah.
just as people would see me walk in a room today and automatically think I didn't maybe go through something as bad as what I really did. So,
Well, let me ask you another question about the pain that you mentioned, because you said it was mostly bad when you first had your
oh
stroke.
yeah, it was terrible.
And is it mostly
It's
subsided
gone.
at this
No, I
point?
don't hurt at all unless it's from overworking it. Too
Mm,
much therapy. Occasionally I'll misstep and I'll maybe a little sore from that. So I can feel stuff pretty well deep tissue.
okay, just not surface.
Topical. Yeah, no.
And
Right.
that's
I
probably
mean,
just the specific nerve connections that were
yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
So, was it like a dull ache in your arm and your leg no matter what movement? Or like if they were doing passive range of motion and things like that, did that make it hurt worse? Or,
Occasionally, some, but I also learned fairly quick, which helped me get through it, is that the more I did that, the less I thought about it, and the less it. And then one day I realized I'm not dealing with that anymore. And it's
good.
just you got to get up and do it. You got to do the work. I mean, I don't want to. So we mentioned sports and running and everything, and stuff like that, and um if you've not got that in your background, I can see where it'd be tough, but it's like anything else you've done in life that you've achieved, there's got to be some work into it, right? You
Yeah.
got to do the work. And I don't mean to sound like that calloused old coach in your life, but man,
No.
if you don't do the work, and that's where I lost track. And so one thing in the book that Stronger After Stroke, they point out, and they have just they have so many clinical history studies of this, is that half of your stroke you're not supposed to use that word,
Mm-mm.
stroke survivors.
That's right.
Yeah, so
Because the
yeah,
victims
they taught me
wouldn't
that
be
right away.
here.
You still, I've defaulted to that. That's the human condition. You
Yeah.
want to be a victim. You're not a victim. I mean, I survived something that was pretty bad. And, oh man, I did it again. Uh,
So half of the people who
Oh,
survive
they don't do the
stroke.
work. If you do anything like you work your left side, you're doing everything left-handed, you ignore the injured part, and when that time comes and you're saying, "I just don't feel like getting out of this chair," the room's not spinning, you're not nauseous, you're just tired, you gotta get up. You've gotta get up, and half of the people is clinically proven don't even get up.
Wow.
And when they do, they're just using, like for me, I'm using my left side on everything, ignoring my right, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You've got to challenge yourself, man. If there's one message, just engage.
Yeah.
You got to give it a shot.
And we do have lots of like classes that we try to offer here because I don't know if you ever did this, but sometimes you get maxed out on your physical therapy visits that
Oh,
are
you do.
covered per year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's a big part of it. That's part of the program almost.
definitely. And so here at the Norton Neuroscience Institute Resource Center, we host a lot of free classes and support groups, like the support group he mentioned, but also there's neuro yoga and Tai Chi and Feldenkrais, which is another thing that, have you tried that yet?
No,
You
what
need to
is it? I
try
don't even
that.
know what
It
that
helps
is.
target your neuroplasticity. So I think you would really like it.
What's the term
There's an
again?
entire episode of the Stronger After Stroke podcast about it. I will share it with you, Mark. But you can join in virtually on like I think they'll send out a Teams link if you register. Go to nortonhealthcare.com/NNI classes. I believe there's a link in the show notes to every episode, and you can join in virtually from wherever you are. So if you don't live in Louisville and you didn't come to Norton when you had a stroke, you could still participate in these things either in person or virtually. So definitely check that out.
I
Yeah.
will. Yeah. So, uh, being able to do that, that is a big thing. So, if like going to Crestman, I haven't gone the last few because it's 50 minutes one way. So, your podcast is a good example of things that I'm kind of moving into in the virtual. Being able to do something like that virtually is just, it's huge in our world.
Yeah.
If especially, I would think a lot of people listening to this or have been through something similar to me. Driving could be an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it still is for me. So,
Well, shoot, gas money.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Oh, well, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. There's lots of barriers. And then this podcast is now heard in 92 countries. So people all over the world
that's
can
awesome.
relate to this. Stroke is the number one leading cause of disability worldwide. So it's not just an American problem. It's a worldwide problem. And so hearing your experience, people might be listen to a translation of it. Who knows?
That is amazing, and you're right, like, the Cressman facility,
Mhm.
the acute rehab you
Yes.
mentioned, when I landed on that in that facility out of the emergency care, it was a whole floor. It was an entire, like, all the way down the hallway, another hallway, and, they're working to get me out, I mean, it's a medicals, but still, they're working to get me out of there as quick as they can, so 'cause they've got I had no idea, and it was all stroke, neurological, brain bleeds, everything you can imagine,
Everything neuro.
every story, and I had just no idea, like what you just said, that it's going on every single day. Every day, someone's calling 911 just like me, and their
Every
life
40
is
seconds in the United States, someone
wow,
is having a stroke.
that's
So
crazy.
I'm definitely
I
excited to
didn't know
get
that.
to celebrate all of our survivors because stroke care and treatment has come a long way.
Mhm.
Stroke prevention has come a long way. We've got episodes on all the different ways we can take action to prevent stroke as well. But stories like your recovery are so powerful to give people hope and a voice to the process, like how they're feeling in the midst of the process. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Let
definitely.
me do it. I hope my story helps somebody,
Yeah,
and we can do another whole episode on the life that I was choosing to live pre-stroke and prevention and stuff like that, I've only been able to touch a second on that, but, but once you've had a stroke, you're right, understanding and embracing and diving into recovery
hmm
top to bottom, even when you don't feel like it, man, if you can just that's my parting word, is just to challenge yourself to get out of that chair, man.
And you're not alone, and there are resources available, even if you can join physically or if you can only join virtually. Please do that. That's what it's there for. It's there for exactly that situation. So, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Stronger After Stroke podcast and hearing Mark's story, please leave a comment and let us know if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on any of the audio platforms. And leave a comment if there's another question you have that you'd like to have answered. And I will see you in the next episode.